Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Tomorrow Never Dies, the 18th James Bond film, and it's directed by Roger Spottiswoode. And Tomorrow Never Dies is an interesting film. This kind of this pattern, and where Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough. How people view them is kind of similar to The Living Daylights and License to Kill, as in. A lot of people that would rank this high, this film, don't really think much of The World Is Not Enough, and vice versa. It was kind of similar, with The Living Daylights and License to Kill, really. And I think I'm one of the people who I don't hate this film, but at all. It's a solid film, but I'm one of the people that regards The World Is Not Enough as a much better film. And I don't think too much of this one, for Bond standards, really. But the opening scene, it could have been a lot better. It's pretty basic. You've got some decent stealth scenes in there, and tension. But I really didn't like the way that everyone was, in on Bond's sort of mission. M and everyone, watching him and kind of trying to help him out. I didn't really feel that worked, and sometimes it's best actually in Bond films where Bond is kind of left to his own. He gets his briefing, and he's kind of left to his own devices, and he goes on this, these missions, meeting characters along the way. But I found this opening scene to be a bit, commercialised and just generic. It was like a generic spy film, really, and I didn't feel it worked. And there's some weakness in the script straight away. You can see with some of the characters delivering kind of cheesy lines. I liked the stealth with Pierce Brosnan, but I feel that it would have worked a lot better without the people in the rooms, all the agents trying to getting on Bond's mission. I just feel it wasn't. Could have been done a lot better. There was some decent, jet scenes as well, the jet chase. But overall, quite a weak opening scene for me. And just very generic. And then it leads into the titles, and I'm not sure what happened, but after the GoldenEye titles are stunning. I didn't like these ones. I thought they were very generic. They felt rushed, and just terrible CGI, unfortunately, used, and just not impressive titles at all, and very very bland colours and everything, and the title song is unfortunately it's dreadful for me. Performed by Sheryl Crow, and it's grating. It really is annoying. And it's a shame because GoldenEye was one of the best themes for me, and this one is it's just annoying, poorly sung. The lyrics aren't great either, and you just kind of want it to end, unfortunately, and it doesn't really fit Bond either. Just an annoying song, one of the worst Bond themes for me. But this film, after that, it started to pick up, and it was really intriguing. In the first act, and really leading up to the hour mark, which is roughly halfway through the film, I was finding that this was really good. The way that Bond kind of meets up with Paris, who's a character in the film, played by Teri Hatcher. I thought these scenes were really good, and the backstory, the way the exposition for these two characters' backstory, Bond and this woman Paris, were really good, and the way that she's kind of involved. Well, she's the partner of Elliot Carver, the main villain of the film, who's played by Jonathan Pryce. The way that the dynamics there were playing off, I thought were really interesting. It was really well set up. And that party scene was just it was kind of classic Bond in some ways, and of course as well early on you've got this amazing action scene where Bond controls, of course, the car through this remote control device. And that's absolutely classic action Bond, really. And the way, his acting there as well, it's just such a fun scene, and really well designed. But I don't feel that the action in the second half really lives up to that scene. I think that was the only standout action scene, unfortunately, of the film. But yeah, no, it was really good in the really the first hour. As I say, the action was great. You've got some really patient scenes, that were building up things, and dynamics and everything. And the Bond girl as well. I think I feel that they should have really stuck with Teri Hatcher. I would have preferred that anyway, because Michelle Yeoh, I wasn't too impressed with her performance, and yeah, her character, Llewelyn. It's good that she's. The good thing is that she's a good fighter and that, and she's a Bond girl that can help Bond out in that sense. But her character, and some characters in films, it's fine if you don't give any, backstory and stuff, too much exposition. As long as they are, they've got a presence and they are mysterious, and it doesn't matter if you, for example, Clint Eastwood, his characters in the Dollars trilogy, they don't really need a backstory, and his performance and his character's so just legendary that it doesn't really matter. But I feel that in this case, I would have liked it if her characters had some at least motivations and was more fleshed out. And I just didn't feel the performance was that good either. It was quite generic. They had somewhat of a chemistry, her and Pierce Brosnan, but overall I think she was just unfortunately a bland action character. Good at fighting, but not that interesting, and didn't really add too much to the film, other than just being there to help Bond, take out enemies and stuff. But yeah, Teri Hatcher was more interesting, and unfortunately, she wasn't the main Bond girl of the film. And Jonathan Pryce, his character Elliot Carver, he starts out as quite an intriguing character, and it's a different plot really. Well, it's kind of it's another World War III plot, but it's done through this. He's trying to build this media empire, and he's trying to global media empire, and he's trying to get broadcasting rights and stuff like that. And that's a different take, really. And it was more of this intellectual character than a lot of the Bond villains. And it starts out, this is quite interesting, and it's different for a Bond villain, but ultimately it doesn't really follow through. And I think his motivations and his plans, they don't really remain that interesting. And actually, as well, I don't think his character really fit the tone, especially of the last act of the film. And yeah, it's a villain that's I don't think it's well written really. The performance was fine. Not one of his best performances, Jonathan Pryce, but I think the main problem was the writing, and it just got a bit too maybe a bit too convoluted. But I wasn't really invested after a while in the villain's motivations, and I couldn't really quite see what was the point really, and it was just a bit boring really. The way his plans play out, because it ends up with another generic action scene at the end and stuff, and it doesn't quite mesh. His plans, they just don't quite fit with the film really. So yeah, but overall the first hour or so was a bit under an hour, was really good. I was invested in in Teri Hatcher, her character, and Bond and their past, and there was a great action scene as well. With that car track, that BMW car scene, And Pierce Brosnan is still on form in this film. I feel he's nowhere near as good as he was in Goldeneye, but that none of his other performances are as good as that. But he was still fine here, and that wasn't the issue at all, really. It was just after the first hour or so, things take a dip. And you've got some, prolonged action scenes, really, when there's this bike chase and other things involved and stuff. But yeah, it's not that good, really, that scene, and it goes on for quite a while, maybe 10, 15 minutes. But it's not good enough action, and it's just repetitive. And I just feel, it just turned into another generic Bond, really. And yeah, the action scenes, the final act action scenes, are the worst. It just turns into a really basic, B film kind of loads of overuse of slow motion, some pretty generic editing, and there's no subtlety at all in the second half, really, at all. And yes, these action scenes are not well put together, I don't feel. There's just so much slow motion, so much over the top action that's not well shot, really. It doesn't feel that dynamic, and there's just too many scenes of the Bond girl just beating people up in a generic style. And yeah, the one of the henchmen as well, he's not that great at all. They were trying to probably go for kind of like a Jaws type character, massive character, but he wasn't very good at all in it. And yeah, just the scenes at the end are just so boring, really, tiresome. And the villain's plans, as I say, they don't follow through. They don't, they don't come together. I feel that where you're kind of like, oh, that was compelling. They don't. They just they fall apart, really, and it just turns into a generic action film, really, as I say, with very little character development in this second half. The villain, they try and kind of develop his plans, but they don't quite work at all. But at least they tried with him. I don't feel they tried with any other characters in the second half, really, to kind of develop their characters. And Bond is he's just going through the motions, with just typical action scenes. Nothing stands out at all, really, in this second half. It's not bad. It's just not. It's nothing special. At best, it's average, mediocre. But because of this this first half and some of the greatness, really, of the early scenes, it kind of balances out to kind of make a solid Bond film overall, I feel, with some fine acting overall, and yeah, it just doesn't stand out, and it's not Bond standards for me. As I've said before, I'm happy with an 8.5, 85%, or a 9, out of 10 kind of thing from a Bond film, just because of how how many great Bond films there's been. Their highs, are quite something, and the way that them 60s Bonds, the kind of consistency of them, kind of set the bar, really. I feel that I'm disappointed, certainly with a Bond film that's less than an 80%, and I think I'd give this film a 71%. Good, nothing more, and really dipping into that average mark, but because of the first hour or so, and some of the greatness there, as I've said, I can't quite give it below good, below solid. Because it kind of balanced out. That's some of that mediocre scenes and sequences that happened in the second half. They kind of balance out with some of that the greatness of the first, and some of the things that it had going for it, really. It just didn't turn in. It turned out to it just didn't deliver. All of the things that were going on, the villain's plans. you know, and the Bond girl and stuff, and it just never came together really to give anything much in that second half. But because of that first half, you know, I think it's just a good film. It's really, you know, it's close to falling to average, as I say, but yeah, no, it's a fine Bond film. Yeah, with some things to praise, but overall it is disappointing. And it's actually not quite as good as I remembered. You know, I remember liking it a lot more. You know, when I was a kid and that, and just, you know, yeah, I always remember this as one of my one of the better Bonds, but yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, you know, it's below the middle mark, and not one of the worst. But yeah, not one of the better Bonds at all. And I definitely think The World Is Not Enough. It is far better than this. Yeah, so overall, a fine Bond film. I can't really say much more. Yeah, it's fine. It's there, but it's nothing special. But yeah, it's still, as I say, that consistent Bond. You know, the License to Kill all the way to Stopping at Die Another Day. It was still consistent. This was still solid, and it kept up that consistency. But it wasn't really the standards of what Bond should be for me. And it was overall quite a forgettable film, throwaway film really, with some standout moments, but never really overall as a film coming together to deliver. And while Jonathan Pryce gives a fine performance, his villain and his plans, you know, the way they're written and stuff, and the Bond girl, really, you know, it kind of lets the film down. So yeah, thanks for watching my review. Next up is The World Is Not Enough, which is another divisive Bond, which I absolutely love, and I'll be reviewing that next. So thanks for watching.